right there. And I thank you, thank you.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This afternoon, we keep our prayers lifted for the people of Texas and the tremendous loss of life caused by a natural disaster, an act of God, the flood. And as our politicians and our politics turn to the blame game of who's responsible, who did not alert who, the simple fact of the matter is there is no way to possibly prepare or respond to an act of God on the scale that this human disaster represents. And so beyond the blame, we are joining in condolence for the men and women and the families that have been lost in this horrific process. And hopefully we might recognize that while there are many who have not been found, even more that have not been found than have been found, the last count that I have is 120 have been recovered, but as many as 170 people are still missing. We should at this time just be thoughtful and prayerful. If my grandmother were living, or if I were with my mother, she would say, be grateful to God. But for the grace of God go I. And so again, our prayers to the people of Texas. And I also want to offer our gratitude as I pivot to the mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Karen Bass, for the courage that she has shown in MacArthur Park. I listened this morning to Dominique DePrima's show, where she had, I think, a number of elected officials on the show who were talking about what the consequences of these fully armed, fully clothed military personnel, far from the initial jurisdiction that the President of the United States initially said he was bringing them into Los Angeles to protect federal property and the downtown area. I heard this morning businessmen saying that people are not coming downtown, and therefore people are losing their jobs, their livelihoods, because of this federal occupation, this overreach by the administration. But I want Mayor Karen Bass and the people of Los Angeles to know that the mayor of the city of Los Angeles is showing us a stunning example and leadership for mayors around the city that, because of the so-called Big Better Bill, now provides more money for immigration enforcement than it does for the entire Department of Justice, which means that ICE is coming to Chicago. It's coming to Detroit. It's coming to a city near you as Donald Trump continues his oppression of the American people. We are not unmindful of what that represents at this moment, and we're all watching very carefully the leadership of Mayor Karen Bass, which is so critical at this very hour. Today's show, we're going to turn our attention to the Republic, the state of the Republic. What is the Republic? My guest in the first hour is Atiba Madian, president and founder of Party Politics USA. For the past year, Party Politics has collected data from varying American demographics about what they want the next president to work on. Atiba is also a public affairs consultant with 20 years of experience building coalitions and strategic partnerships for corporations and nonprofits. He has specialized knowledge and expertise in legislative strategy, communication, partnerships, outreach, and education. For the past 7 years, he has been a consultant for Pfizer and has consulted for the Union Station Redevelopment Corporation, Common Health Action, National Conference of State Legislators, National Black Caucus of State Legislators, and the National Native American Caucus of State Legislators. He has a very, very impressive resume. We're welcoming Atiba Madian back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Jesse, it's great to be with you. And that was a pretty good opening about the state of what's going on right now in the country. And my heart also goes out to the families of those who are affected and impacted, who've lost their loved ones, as well as to those prayers to those who are still searching for those who are missing.
Atiba is also the former Deputy Executive Director of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, and we are going to talk about our responses during this critical period. So grateful that Atiba is joining us back on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are going to turn our attention to the Republic, that government structure that came into existence before the Bill of Rights. And in a profound way, the Bill of Rights amended the Republic and provided individual rights to the American people. Atiba has given some serious thought to what the Republic is, what the Republic ain't, how we've spent time as Americans trying to amend the Republic just to exact some basic human rights out of what it means to be an American. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour is Atiba Madian. When we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
No one wants to leave behind stress for their family. That's why a trust or a will is so important. Without one, your assets might go to the wrong people or leave out loved ones. Also, probate is long, expensive, and often avoidable with a revocable trust. Trustandwill.com makes it simple to create a personalized estate plan. A trust or will provides clarity and peace of mind. Get 20% off on your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/radio.
Career changers, including veterans and active duty service members. Your transition starts here. Go from GI to IT in a matter of months. Become a certified cyber warrior with training at My Computer Career. Cybersecurity specialists are in high demand, offering IT pros great opportunities and a rewarding lifestyle while protecting our people, liberty, and treasured institutions from cyber threats. Deploy your career in IT today. Learn more at mycomputercareer.edu/CWP. SkillBridge and other VA benefits are available to those who qualify.
Agnes was in deep trouble with the IRS.
I owed the IRS a lot of money. I did not know what I was going to do. I was scared.
Agnes caught a break and found out about Optima Tax Relief.
But when I called Optima Tax, they guaranteed me that they were going to help me out the best that they can. And they did.
Optima stopped the IRS.
No more telephone calls, no more letters. Optima Tax took care of everything. I can finally sleep at night. I was stress-free.
Agnes was finally free from her IRS nightmare.
It was like a burden was lifted off of me, and it was a great feeling.
Are you in deep trouble with the IRS? You might want to listen to Agnes.
I would refer Optima Tax Relief to anyone because they got me debt-free from owing the IRS any more money.
Call Optima right now for your free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Atiba Madian has worked as a TV political contributor for BNC News, The Heat, In the Know with Mo, The Leslie Marshall Show, iHeartRadio, Government Exec, 96.3 WHUR, and the One America News Network. He's most recently was a guest host on Rising and American Daily News, an opinion web series produced by Washington, D.C. political newspaper The Hill. In 2020, Atiba released his first novel, Saving Grace, a political thriller. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show once again.
Thanks, Jesse. It's great to be here.
Atiba, let's talk about this republic. Help us better understand what's right about it, what's wrong about it, and how we find ourselves situated in it.
I feel like that's a loaded question. To say what's right with it, it depends on who you're asking. And if you look at the complexities of where our country is right now, you talked a lot about things that have been going on in California and all around the country as it relates to immigration, in terms of what we see that's going on south, closer, further south in terms of with the flooding. There's so many things that have been coming at us the last 8 months that it's really hard to describe or to define if this is even a republic anymore. We've seen some Supreme Court justice decisions that were just handed down that literally say something that I have been telling people for many, many years, when they said, particularly during the administration prior to President Biden, that the president is not above the law. And one of the things that I often said was the president technically is above the law. It's in the way that I kind of try to conceptualize that for people to understand is there's a reason why the president has his own counsel. There's a reason why there's a Congress and a Senate that's supposed to be there as a checks and balances, but the president can actually take us to war without going to Congress. Of course, still has to go back to Congress, but we can still go to war. The president can allocate funding. And we're seeing all these things that I've heard lots of people say, that, well, why don't we have police reform? Why don't we have voter reform? The president can do anything. And we didn't see presidents do that. We saw, for instance, with Democratic administrations, presidents who said, well, we want to work across party lines. But right now, what we see is really more so autocratic or authoritarianism at work, where the president is exercising the full power of the bully pulpit. And the republic does not look right now very good.
When Mrs. Powell walks out and meets Benjamin Franklin on September 17th, 1787, and the ink is yet to be dried on the Constitution itself, again, 4 years before the Bill of Rights, she walks up to Dr. Franklin and she says, Dr. Franklin, what have we here? She stands outside of Independence Hall on September 17th, 1787. Doc, what we got, a republic or a monarchy? And with no hesitation whatsoever, Franklin responds, quote, a republic if you can keep it. If we separate the republic, Atiba, from the Bill of Rights itself, that's 1791, we're discussing 1787, we see the preeminent idea of property rights being protected in the republic. We see the dehumanization of African Americans, 3/5 of a human being, in the republic. In the republic, we see that non-land owning white men cannot vote. In the republic, we see no interests of women that are being protected. In the republic, there are some deep and profound problems, and I'd like to argue that there's still a theological experiment within the republic that is redeemable. I'll save that for another day. But central to the republic is the idea that discrimination, that white male supremacy is legal in the very structure of this government. Atiba?
Well, I mean, all those things are true. I think it was the early 1970s, and correct me if I'm wrong, before women could actually own property without a man's, or have a mortgage without a man's name being on it. America has long been an experiment in terms of human behavior, an experiment in terms of how we coexist from different ethnicities, and property rights really goes back to, in my opinion, still back to the origin of what we call capitalism today. If you look at how the Native Americans were treated, and just over generations, just how this idea of supremacy has existed within the country, it has existed within this idea that there is a rule of law.
Mm.
We keep hearing this different terminology, and in different ways, people have been able to band together to build coalitions to be able to break down those barriers. So if you talk about women in terms of the vote, you can also go back to someone like Frederick Douglass and other men who came together and said and tried to push that idea. But then we still didn't see women having the right to vote until I believe it was 1919. And just over the course of this republic, everything has been grounded in this idea, whether or not it was Plessy versus Ferguson, creating separate but equal, whether or not it was the need to go decades later to Brown versus Board of Education to tear down some of those barriers. All of these things within the republic, there's always been the fight. And we often talk about America being involved in wars abroad when we don't talk as much about the wars that are going on within. And the republic, what did we say in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. But it is divisible, and it's long been divisible, and it's divided based on the idea of ethnicity or national origin, or we don't like immigrants, or using terms like illegal alien. All of those things or whatever are meant to divide us, to fracture and to break apart the republic, so that minor or smaller groups of people can control the government, which is not part of the democracy, which is not part of the idea of republic, though that's what we've been sold, and that's what we want to believe. I have some other things, but I'm going to leave it at that right now.
No, I think you're spot on. I think that analysis is brilliant. In fact, and I want our listeners to understand that we are, and you have to imagine with us, you have to take a mental flight with Atiba Median this afternoon to 1787. I'm not discussing freedom of speech, freedom of church, freedom of assembly. I'm not discussing due process rights. I'm not discussing the Second Amendment and guns. I'm talking about the structure of the republic itself. That's what Atiba and I are talking about in this hour. And in a real sense, Atiba, when you think about the individual freedoms that we hold so dear today, which African Americans did not have access to in any measurable means until the 13th Amendment, and more specifically, the citizenship rights guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, the amendments themselves are addendums. They are exactly what they are, amendments to the republic, amendments to the way of life that was very close to a monarchy. That was Mrs. Powell's confusion. What we got, Mr. Franklin? What we got, doctor? And Dr. Franklin said, we have a republic if you can keep it. So Franklin even hits at how fragile the idea of the structure of the government is. Atiba?
And it's long been. We've had presidents over the years who've told us that it was that. I think we've been lucky, blessed to have, to this point, men who were able to cloak in a way how they were utilizing that power to make it seem as if, or make it palatable for the people. I think Nixon probably came the closest in terms of what we know, that the corrupt nature, in terms of how far he was to go or tried to go to hold on to the presidency. But it was his fear and his insecurity that led to the Watergate scandal. And more than likely, he would have won a second term without Watergate, but he was so tied into this. Maybe it was his fear from having lost the election back in 1960 to President Kennedy that led him to do some of the things that he did. And then after that, the country said, well, we want somebody different. So we had Ford, we had Carter. And then the country said, well, we don't want that. We want somebody who's still strong. We have Reagan. It's just an interesting piece, to look at the idea of the republic. For me, I've always been a student of looking at the president's club. Who have been presidents? Why has the country gone in certain directions to elect certain men as president? But more so studying today, why has the country then, going back to what you started talking about initially, why has the country in a sense gone backwards by turning its back or saying that it did not want two women who were qualified to become president and decided it wanted something else to which is where we have what's going on today, which I think the majority of Americans, though the media tells us differently, I don't believe that the majority of Americans is happy with the direction that the country is in right now.
I think I think I know you're absolutely right. When I think about African Americans, the first 15 presidents of the United States, on the question of slavery, to me, they're worthless. They make great statements and they certainly advocate great ideals, but they kick the can down the road on the fundamental question of human rights. Lincoln, he's a turning point in the presidency. I certainly think from Lincoln to Roosevelt, the 4 terms that Roosevelt was elected, saving his nation from both moral and financial bankruptcy is a turning point. I think that history is different as a result of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But I also think that the contribution of Lyndon Johnson is nothing short of extraordinary. He had a segregationist Southern past, and he advances the 64 Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 65, and subsequent public accommodations legislation. But Atiba, I got to believe that the most unlucky president in American history has to be Richard Nixon. I mean, this guy should not have resigned. He shouldn't have quit. He had a right to record the Watergate break-ins or do whatever he did, because that's essentially the license that the Supreme Court of the United States has given this president.
Yeah, but I also think, and you served in Congress, Justice, so you know this way better than me. But I think that the reason why Nixon resigned wasn't because he wanted to. He resigned because the will of the people exerted itself to the extent that congressional members, senators, and House members felt that they needed to. They could not impeach him or not remove him from office, and so he made the decision to resign so that he wouldn't become the first president actually removed by Congress. But you know, it also goes back to, and this is what I like to believe. Some people might say it's an ideal way of thinking, but I still like to believe that the will and the power is with the people. If you look at 2008, how did we get a president who did not look like the prior 43 presidents before him? And you know, that came about because the people came together as more so as a country, as an America, as a unified front, regardless. And people voted who were Republican, voted for Obama, people who were white and Hispanic and Native American, et cetera, because he had a message that was resounding and that people wanted to hear about hope and change. And it was a message. And I often talk about love as opposed to hate. And right now, there's a whole lot of hate that's going on. And it's not just hate that's coming from one side. It's hate coming from all these different sides. And as Lincoln said, a house divided will fall. And, you know, this house is falling. And, you know, I don't know, honestly, right now, if it's necessarily a bad thing for it to fall. And I say that to the extent that we have been living in a dreamlike state that we kept believing that everything would be okay if we just do nothing. And I think that the bottom line to this is that people have to recognize that we cannot sit by in a republic or in a democracy and do nothing.
You know, I want to comment on something you said about the people and their power to govern. I think it was Senator Stennis. He might have been Congressman Stennis, but I think it was Senator Stennis who said in the 50s and in the 60s, and this was his Southern drawl, in America, the people's govern. The people govern. In other words, the Constitution itself is a kind of sliding ruler where, depending upon the sentiments of the American people at any given moment in history, the sentiments may impeach a president, but another group of American people, based upon their sentiments, may reelect a twice impeached president. And that's part of the dynamic that is our democracy without the firmness of it. I'm looking now at a quote from George Washington's inaugural address where he says, and this is to my point about the theological experiment, the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as firmly staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people, meaning that the Constitution means one thing in George Washington's time. It means another thing in Lyndon Johnson's time. It's the same document. It's the same parchment. It's the same words, plus amendments going forward. It means something else. So, Tiba, we have about a minute before we come forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm going to go to something else that George Washington said, and I was in his farewell address. And I say this a lot lately, that he said why he was against political parties. And he said he wasn't for political parties because he said that people will get to the point, and this goes to the weakness of people, but we'll get to a point where they'll put the interests of the party before the interests of the country. Right now, that's where we are. People are putting the interests of a party, the interests of their communities, the interest over the country. And we've got to find some ways, dynamics, if we don't want the republic to fail or to fall, or we want to have a better life for our next generations, or what have you, we've got to figure out how we're going to come together as opposed to just trying to protect one over another.
I'm going to try my very best to be optimistic. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Atiba Median is our very special guest in this half hour. In this hour, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We're going to talk about whether or not the country's going to make it when we come forward.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says he's open to NASCAR returning to the city, but not on July 4th weekend.
If, in fact, NASCAR returns, what is the optimal time in which the 2 days or 3 days should occur?
He says all options are on the table for talks with NASCAR. Essence Fest says it's to blame for Lauryn Hill's late set, not her. She hit the stage after 2:30 a.m. Saturday instead of Friday night. The fest told fans to, quote, put some respect on her name, end quote. Glorilla, the Isley Brothers, and Maxwell also faced delays. And President Trump is once again threatening a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., saying it will reduce crime and keep the city running smoothly. Speaking during a cabinet meeting, he added his team has a good relationship with Black Mayor Muriel Bowser, but said, quote, we're testing to see if it works, end quote. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies, offering national LTE coverage and no subscription ever. Perfect for instant contact with an aging parent. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get an extra 60% off, free UPS shipping, and add code radio for an extra 5% off.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Ben Shelton's history chase at Wimbledon is over. Shelton, the only African-American to reach the quarterfinals in the men's bracket, was eliminated in straight sets Wednesday morning by Yannick Sinner of Italy. Sinner, the number one tennis player in the world, beat Shelton 7-6, 6-4, and 6-4. The 22-year-old Shelton was attempting to become the first African-American man to win the Wimbledon championship since Arthur Ashe in 1975. One of the perks for Hampton and North Carolina A&T getting chosen to play in the NBA HBCU Classic is that each school will receive a $100,000 donation from the NBA. The NBA also covers all travel expenses for both teams. Hampton and North Carolina A&T will play each other during NBA All-Star Weekend at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The All-Star Game is February 15th. This will be the fifth HBCU Classic sponsored by the NBA. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Hello, family. This is Dr. Rosa Milligan, self-appointed mayor of South Central LA. I'm sounding the alarm. AI, artificial intelligence, is not coming. It's already here. Join me with a powerful Zoom seminar that will teach you how to use AI for your personal and business use. Go to mytechacademy.net or call 213-878-4742.
Let's be real. Too many black businesses missed out on COVID PPP loans because they weren't tech ready. We can't afford to be left behind again. This time, we must lead. Register today at mytechacademy.net or call 213-878-4742.
You know me, Dr. Rosa, trusted voice of the people, 50 years fighting for literacy, technology, and living trust education. And now I got your back on AI. Go to mytechacademy.net or call 213-878-4742. Your future is calling. Answer.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special is Atiba Madian. Atiba, I want to give you an opportunity to flush out your concern about whether or not the Republic can make it. I received news just before the show that President Trump has suggested that he is going to make a serious push to take over the nation's capital. He says he has profound respect for Muriel Bowser, but he wants it to be a federal enclave. He even mentioned New York, but certainly D.C. Go ahead.
Yeah, and being a native Washingtonian, that is concerning. But what's also concerning is just the state of D.C. from a crime standpoint. I think for a long time we keep giving our elected officials a pass. DC, I mean, I grew up in an era where DC was called the murder capital of the United States. And it's long been a dividing line of DC with the Anacostia River. And it's funny because I talk about some of this stuff within in Saving Grace, my novel. And the purpose of the reason why I brought these things up was recognizing what I grew up with and what I saw. So the poverty is always, not always, but mostly has extended to the northeast, southeast section of the city, which has continued to progressively try to move people out. DC will boast that it was one of the first places in the country to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But there have been quite a few studies that show that in order to live comfortably in DC, you need to make at least six figures. You need to make at least over $100,000. Most of us in the city, unfortunately, are not making $100,000. Though there are a lot of African Americans who are professional and doing well, it's still a very expensive place to live. So when you have those type of things, and when you have African Americans in the city, particularly those sections of the city, are number one in every category you want to be last in. So infant mortality, healthcare, and even though DC boasts it has 97%, that 90-some percent of the citizens in DC have healthcare. In terms of murder, in terms of incarceration, and in terms of poverty. So, you know, if you look to the other side of the city, you go further up towards Chevy Chase and up 16th Street, which they call the Gold Coast, where a lot of African Americans have lived, but there are others who are now moving in the city, and a home in DC is going for $1 million plus. And I'm not going to say that's the average, but it's pretty much up there. So unfortunately, it's a resegregation that's going on in the city. It's been a long fight in terms of the fact that DC does not have total control because DC is considered to be a territory. And I'm not surprised that the president is taking the stance that he is, because if you look at the city itself, and, you know, every time I go back, I'm like, wow, there's a new business, there's a new building, all the buildings, again, are smaller, all the rents are going higher, all the prices of everything is going higher. And I think that when I think about Malcolm X's statement that the issue, he said at that time, was not about black and white, it was green. That has long been the thing. It's been 50, 60 years since he said that. And that is exactly what it is today. So when I hear the president saying that, I lived in a neighborhood on Capitol Hill where I actually would go and talk to homeless people. And it was a smelly area. It was a depressed area. And it was in a pretty much middle class to upper middle class neighborhood. But those homeless people were looking for shelter. So they lived underneath the bridge going toward Union Station. And the city, instead of, in my opinion, doing something about that problem, it would clear the area out, clean the area. And when I talked to my friends who are elected officials there, they would say, well, there's mental illness. There are other issues that are afoot. Well, poverty brings on mental illness. Not being able to take care of your family and talking to people who actually had families living on the street, who actually had jobs and were taking their kids to school. DC has a lot of issues that it has never really addressed. And I'll just say this. When I saw and see the homeless crisis going on in the city, when I see the poverty of African Americans in the city, when I see people getting on the buses and it's depressing. We can't keep saying Black Lives Matter if we're not taking care of what is the lives that matter. And we can't keep saying, oh, well, it's someone else that is doing this to us when we've had African-American leadership within these cities, within these places, and we haven't seen any changes. So, it gives the optics that the president needs to be able to say, I'm going to step in and if we can't figure out how to do this, I'll step in and figure out something different.
My father was a shadow senator for the District of Columbia after his presidential campaigns, because there are 9 states in the union that have less population than the District of Columbia. Yet it's a district. Its entire budget is controlled by the Congress of the United States, the only territory or district in the United States whose budget is controlled by Congress. They can jerk DC around anytime that they want. But the reality is there are 18 men and women in the United States Senate from different territories in the United States who have less people than the 10 square miles that is the District of Columbia. Washington, D.C. deserves two United States senators. And yes, Eleanor Holmes Norton must be a voting member, a permanent member who votes in the Congress of the United States, not only in committee, but before the entire Congress itself. It seems to me that when Donald Trump makes the argument that Canada should be a state, or I'm going to make other states part of the United States, that to overlook the District of Columbia in terms of their long fought for request for statehood, because the disparities of the taxes that they pay and the monies that they receive in return, and yet they have no representation in the United States Senate and are sometimes voting member of the state legislature, depending upon how the U.S. the argument that somehow, Atiba, Black mayors, Black city council persons have a management problem when DC itself may be shortchanged billions of dollars in taxable money that should be returned to them on an annual basis. And if they were a U.S. senators and there was a voting member of Congress, they'd actually have it.
Mm-hmm. All
Work
that.
with me.
Yeah, all that. But there's this other stuff, and so let's go back. How did DC get created? You had Thomas Jefferson, George Washington saw DC as possibly being a port city. They were able to get Maryland, Virginia to cede land to DC in exchange for not having voting representation as a district. Then the people who were in those areas got to vote in the Maryland election or Virginia election, and that's how initially there was voting representation. Over time, that has changed. A lot of times, I don't know. I think part of the issue that DC has, and I've had this conversation for years, and people talk about, oh, you work with state legislators. And I'm like, there were a lot of state legislators that did not know that DC did not have home rule. And what does that mean? DC residents were able to vote in the presidential election until legislation was passed in the 1960s. And then they didn't get to vote in the first election, I believe, until it was either 1968 or 1972. DC is a place where a lot of slaves came when they became free, especially after slavery ended. But then they were free, but they didn't have anywhere to go. When I see the homeless population in DC, I have a visual part of like what it might have looked like when people were coming to the city, didn't have jobs, didn't have a place to live, and most importantly, did not have money. So DC has long been an enclave for these other things. DC has was a segregated city. I have a friend whose father was Black and her mom was German or white, and driving in the city in the 50s and 60s, her mom had to ride in the back seat while her father drove. DC is a micro part of like the bigger problems that you see within the country. But I don't just like to say it's just about African-American leadership or what it is that we can or what we don't. I think a lot of it is also citizens not recognizing that we have more power and we keep giving it up. And we keep relinquishing that. And we have made education not as important as it once was. I think we really have to go back to, and that's just not just an African-American issue. This is an American issue. You brought up Republic earlier. You've talked about the Constitution. I would like to, the next thing that I like to do and talk to people on the streets and get information from is, how many of you know what the Constitution is? How many of you all know what a republic is? Because we keep saying that we want to fight for something, but I don't think that many people know what they're fighting for, especially when people get so caught up in this idea that has been festered and put into our minds that, oh, I'm not going to vote because there's not an elected official that excites me enough.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Atiba Median.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Well, thank you. Yeah. At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580. And we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turn away, you were right there. Thank you, thank you.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our next hour, The Politics of Our Faith with Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary will be our guest and regular contributor. Looking forward to having a conversation with Todd Yeary on a myriad of conversations and subject matters that are confronting our nation and our people at this hour. But in this hour, Atiba Median is offering us some insights on the Republic and some of the great challenges that we confront as a nation. I just wanted to add, Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, that 2 United States senators from the District of Columbia, since everyone's concerned about democracy, could have stopped the big, bad, ugly bill.
Mm-hmm.
2 United States senators, who probably would have been African-American from the District of Columbia, could have stopped a myriad of Donald Trump's federal appointments by voting and challenging them on their positions on the 14th Amendment. 2 more United States senators, whatever you think of Merrick Garland, could have added Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court and not held that position open when Obama made the appointment. So DC statehood has national consequences and ramifications for our people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to look at this very, very quickly. All it requires to become a state is expression of desire for statehood by the residents. DC has done that. Petitioning Congress. DC has done that. Adopting a constitution. DC has been more than willing to do that. Congressional action by the House and the Senate. DC has requested that. And the approval of a president of the United States with their signature on a House joint resolution is all that it takes to make a state. DC has thought that. So we've had Democratic presidents who've had both the House and the Senate, and they weren't concerned about expanding democracy because they could have expanded the Senate by 2 blacks or by 2 Democrats from the District of Columbia. And the same with Puerto Rico. We'd have 4 United States Senate for 2 territories that have requested the same. So I'm not letting Democrats off the hook either. When we look at the fragility of the Republic, we look at the fragility of our democracy when we had the chance to expand our democracy when we were in charge. That's fair. Atiba, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot, and my apologies. In retrospect, I've probably been all over the place today in terms of some of what I'm saying. But let me
do a great job.
but what you just said is true, and I want to go back to what I said earlier in terms of presidents and like having the House and the Senate, and people saying, well, the president is not above the law and the president can't do all these things. All this stuff could have been fixed a long time ago. But I also blame my elected officials who are in DC for staying where it feels safe, because some of this also takes getting outside of the Beltway. Some of this takes traveling around the country and building relationships with state legislators, and perhaps getting the states to also, those state legislators, to push for DC to get statehood. DC used to be Chocolate City. It's no longer Chocolate City. DC is now almost it's less. It used to be 70-80% black, and now it's closer to 50-51%. But neither here nor there. You can't make it just about having 2 black senators. I think you have to make it about having 2 United States senators. And I think, if they happen to be black, great. If they happen to be Hispanic, great. If they happen to be white, great. Do they have the best interest in a republic of a representative government of the interests of the citizens of the District of Columbia? And that has to be the case all over the country when we're electing officials. If we want to preserve the republic, if we want to preserve the integrity of this country, if we want to still have the respect of people across the world, is literally what America has unfortunately been accused of doing in other countries, is exactly what's happening right here in the United States. And so I think we've got to get back to a very important civics lesson about not just what does a republic look like, but what does it look like for us to all coexist? I remember, and it's funny, I can't say it without using his voice, and that, or not his voice, but like he said it, there are no red states, there are no blue states, there's only the United States. But we're not united. And we never have been. We've always been 50 states of mind, 50 countries within a country that's trying to be and survive as a republic. Can it, and going back to the question that the woman asked Benjamin Franklin, if we can basically, can we make it work? And making it work means taking the interests of all these people and making it and figuring out how do you address it on a national stage where you can have a majority opinion of a majority of Americans who come together who want these things. And what are those things that I think the majority of Americans want? Majority of Americans want to make sure that their next generation of children have a better future than they did. That's it.
One of the great, and I'm going to give you obviously the final word. One of the great tragedies of this debate and argument over DC statehood is when we were 80-20, the chances are those two congressmen, two senators, would have been progressive. Not black or white, but progressive. Voting for healthcare, voting for housing, voting for better education for the residents of the District of Columbia, voting for lower property taxes, demanding their fair share of tax revenue, given what they pay the federal government out of their pockets from the incomes that they earn. But now as DC becomes more and more with $1 million homes and the city becomes 50, 51, you better believe DC is going to be a state. It's going to be a state with two senators who vote for tax breaks, who vote for tax cuts, who are conservative, who are not progressive, who are not voting for the least of these. And I find that personally deeply troubling, that it took a demographic shift away from the progressive needs and the legitimacy that people who've been in that city and in that region for 2 centuries have been fighting for democracy in ways that people who just show up and inherit it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the elected officials in DC have not had, and I'm sorry, I'm not even going to say I'm sorry to my friends who are there, have not had a vision. They've been stuck in trying to be in the present. You have to have when you're an elected official. My belief is that you have to be looking ahead to in the future. That's what we look for the president to do. We look for the president. And we think about the United States military. The military is not just thinking about what it's doing today. I think the military is already thinking 20 years ahead. And I think that what we really need to be figuring out or thinking about is what kind of country do we want to look ahead to, not what kind of country we want to live in today. And that's why I said I think that the message, a unifying message for this country right now, is to find elected officials who really are not just talking but listening to people and asking them, what do you want for your children? What would you like for me to do as an elected official to protect you so that your children can go to college? This is about upward mobility. And right now we're stagnant, and right now we can't compete with the rest of the world. Right now we are so stuck with fighting each other. We're not even thinking about the next generation anymore. So I don't like the terms that we keep using: conservative, progressive, black, white, this. We got to think about this from a human aspect, a human standpoint. What are my human rights, and how am I protecting not just my own rights, but your rights? And how can we live and coexist? And how can we all together prosper within this country? And I don't think that's a conversation that we're having right now.
Atiba Madian has one of the most brilliant minds in the body politic today. Atiba, we have about 2.5 minutes. Can you offer our listeners a word of hope? Yeah, the hope is within us. The hope is within, how are we recognizing and getting out of our own way and not letting the people who keep fanning the fires of hate pull us into the abyss of despair. Because that's where we are. We are in an abyss of despair. I had someone told me once, he said, Atiba, the only way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. And we've got to, I think when you look at history and people hear what Dr. King's idea was of nonviolence, I don't want to speak to anything as it relates to violence and what was going on there. What I want to speak to
is how was it that why were they at that time asking for civil rights? And your father and others were asking for civil rights because this country was uncivil. It wasn't civil. It wasn't civil to one another. And we got to a point where we got comfortable. It's kind of like being king of the, when you play in the game as a kid, King of the Hill, and everybody's trying to push you off. The only way you can survive is if you have other people that are around you that are helping and keeping them from pushing you. And so we've got to recognize that at no point do you let your foot off the gas. You got to keep working. You got to keep, we want comfort, but what does comfort look like if you give up or you just get comfortable? Somebody else wants what you have. And for me, what I would like to see this country get to is, how are we treating each other with love and respect? How are we locking arms with each other? So the hope that I offer, that I hope for, that I live my life with, is having an open heart and knowing that your heart can be broken by doing that.
Tiba?
But having an open heart to saying that I want to hold the door open for you. I want to give you something if I have something that you don't have. Like, how are we all making the world a better place for each other?
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest has been Atiba Madian. When we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says he's open to NASCAR returning to the city, but not on July 4th weekend.
If, in fact, NASCAR returns, what is the optimal time in which the 2 days or 3 days should occur?
He says all options are on the table for talks with NASCAR. Essence Fest says it's to blame for Lauryn Hill's late set, not her. She hit the stage after 2:30 a.m. Saturday instead of Friday night. The fest told fans to, quote, put some respect on her name, end quote. Glorilla, the Isley Brothers, and Maxwell also faced delays. And President Trump is once again threatening a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., saying it will reduce crime and keep the city running smoothly. Speaking during a cabinet meeting, he added his team has a good relationship with Black Mayor Muriel Bowser, but said, quote, we're testing to see if it works, end quote. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies, offering national LTE coverage and no subscription ever. Perfect for instant contact with an aging parent. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get an extra 60% off, free UPS shipping, and add code radio for an extra 5% off.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Ben Shelton's history chase at Wimbledon is over. Shelton, the only African-American to reach the quarterfinals in the men's bracket, was eliminated in straight sets Wednesday morning by Yannick Sinner of Italy. Sinner, the number one tennis player in the world, beat Shelton 7-6, 6-4, and 6-4. The 22-year-old Shelton was attempting to become the first African-American man to win the Wimbledon championship since Arthur Ashe in 1975. One of the perks for Hampton and North Carolina A&T getting chosen to play in the NBA HBCU Classic is that each school will receive a $100,000 donation from the NBA. The NBA also covers all travel expenses for both teams. Hampton and North Carolina A&T will play each other during NBA All-Star Weekend at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The All-Star Game is February 15th. This will be the fifth HBCU Classic sponsored by the NBA. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580. And we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. And I thank you.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, where today on Wednesdays we discuss the politics of our faith with Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary. Todd Yeary is principal of the Yeary Firm, a Maryland-based litigation and government relations firm, and also serves as a senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church, Baltimore, and affiliates. Dr. Yeary is also the former chief executive of the Rainbow Push Coalition, the international affairs organization and civil rights organization founded by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Dr. Yeary's social justice work includes having served on the national board of the National Action Network, past political action chair of the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, and co-founding principal of Community Churches for Community Development, Inc., and is founding principal of SALT, Strategic Advocacy and Legislative Think Tank. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Man, it's Wednesday. We get to hang out. There's a lot to talk about.
Man, we certainly do. Listen, I want to tell you about Atiba Madian. I am so impressed with the way his mind works. I certainly hope that he gives some consideration to expanding his mind and his vision in public service if he chooses to run. He's certainly someone whose mind is giving some serious thought and reflection to what has happened, what's going wrong, and what we need to do to better our community. So I just want to say that because I know you were listening in on the program.
Well, look, hanging out with him the other week was just such a joy and a great time, right? He's clearly thought deeply about the situation in life of not just our people, but all people. And he's a critical thinker too. There's too much shallow conversation going on in public spaces. And we need folks who not only bring critical analysis, but serious compassion to the discourse so that we can work on solutions and not just rhetoric.
He's going to be on the show on the second and fourth Wednesdays. I'm so grateful that his contribution is going to expand on our show because he offers a very, very vital and important point of view. Dr. Yeary, let me ask you something. I got an article from you earlier today where the U.S. Agriculture Secretary says that Medicaid recipients can replace deported farm workers. Now, walk with me on this now. You received your
Listen. Can we at least warm up a little bit before we jump in the deep end of the pool? This craziness right here. Listen, all of the folks in LA who are listening to this live, I need you to keep your hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel and observe all traffic laws. Because this is, I don't even think it was a slip. This isn't information, it's confirmation for all that we've been seeing. That in reordering the economic structures of the country, in an effort to protect what I would even, I didn't come up with it, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was real clear that the fear of the irrational fear of white genetic annihilation is driving immigration policy, and it is fueling the intentional behavior of a government that's being restructured to displace those who have served the government well and faithfully. But public service, public sector jobs help to build an expanding Black and brown middle class. So what do? You get rid of jobs in the federal sector. You try to get folks to go away. You limit opportunities to be able to make inroads. And then you intentionally disrupt the job flow of folks who would come in on work visas, didn't have to be paid minimum wage, didn't have to be given labor protections, but they needed to have cheap labor to get food products to market. Now, we heard this president, when he was candidating the second time, make a reference to this invasion from the southern border, indicating that folks were coming to take, quote, Black jobs. And I don't know who was paying attention at the time. I'm like, well, which black jobs are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about field workers.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Mr. DeSantis's notion that somehow or other the trafficking in African bodies was a job training program. And so that ought to give us all kinds of alarms and force us to now have a critical conversation about what I often invoke our dear ancestor Marvin Gaye, asking what's going on. This is not your imagination, and the revolution is being televised.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour is Dr. S. Todd Yeary. When we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least like to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
No one wants to leave behind stress for their family. That's why a trust or a will is so important. Without one, your assets might go to the wrong people or leave out loved ones. Also, probate is long, expensive, and often avoidable with a revocable trust. Trustandwill.com makes it simple to create a personalized estate plan. A trust or will provides clarity and peace of mind. Get 20% off on your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/radio.
Career changers, including veterans and active duty service members. Your transition starts here. Go from GI to IT in a matter of months. Become a certified cyber warrior with training at My Computer Career. Cybersecurity specialists are in high demand, offering IT pros great opportunities and a rewarding lifestyle while protecting our people, liberty, and treasured institutions from cyber threats. Deploy your career in IT today. Learn more at mycomputercareer.edu/CWP. SkillBridge and other VA benefits are available to those who qualify.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This Wednesday, the politics of our faith with Dr. S. Todd Yeary, Esquire. He has 1 foot in the pulpit, 1 foot in the divine, and 1 foot in the courtroom, 1 foot in the mess. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show with Dr. Yeary. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward.
I got both feet in a reality check today.
Dr. Yeary, I just pulled this up. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins told reporters Tuesday that she thinks Medicaid work requirements and automation will help offset President Trump's massive immigration crackdown, which has threatened migrant farm workers. Quote, "There's been a lot of noise in the last few days and a lot of questions about where the president stands and his vision for farm labor." Rollins said during a news conference with Republican governors, quote, "Ultimately, the answer on this is automation. Also, some reform within the current governing structure. And then also, when you think about there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program, there are plenty of workers in America. 34 million new farm hands, she seems to suggest, are available to fill the void by Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. You gonna be okay, Reverend? You gonna be okay, Reverend?
Listen. Let me start with this disclaimer for all of the folks who are listening, and at the same time talk about how important it is that we have these conversations in this space.
Yes,
where you are moderating key conversations, and Brother Tavis is making sure that there are platforms for us to be able to engage in serious dialogue, because they're talking about this craziness out loud. This wasn't, they caught the secretary on a hot mic. We got all of these able-bodied poor people who can provide a service to those who control the land and the wealth, to make sure that the trade-off is we'll give you compassionate support if you just go work in our fields. Now, some might call that a version of indentured servitude. I don't hear a term limit on the indenture. So basically, they are queuing for us another support mechanism on top of the prison industrial complex to be able to create a new slave system absent shackles. And so we can't be naive about what this hustle is. They've been playing this game for a while, and now they're confident enough that they've hijacked the system sufficiently to be able to say out loud what many of us were already looking at, forecasting, the conversations that have been had with you and with Tavis and with others, about what is the state, what is the condition of Black America. Well, it's a condition that is eroding, and it's not eroding because of some, indirect kind of, coincidental thing. No, this is deliberate. And when they start talking about this out loud, you begin to wonder if that's what they're thinking. What becomes the resistance to stop it before it gets started? Because once that train leaves the station, if you try to play catch up in this litigious environment with these courts across the country, and now that the Supreme Court has limited what trial judges can do to impose national injunctions, you could find yourself fighting slavery like we had to fight slavery back when slavery was in vogue, state by state, moment by moment, hoping you might get a court case that rises to the Supreme Court, and you hope that it doesn't play out like Dred Scott did. That's the reality. They're not hiding their hand. They're not trying to be secret with their intentions. The hustle's out. And all of the time that we've been hearing from those who have come before us and kept lending their voice, look, don't get distracted. Don't believe the hype. They're coming at it. They're calling it wokeism. It's not wokeism. It's actually protecting our self-interest. And they're trying to say, oh, the masses of you who are disproportionately Black, brown, poor whites, we've got a job training program for you, and it's called Take the Place of the Folks That We Put Out, not because they weren't doing good work, but because they were having too many brown babies who are naturalized and born in this country subject to the authority thereof. They're trying to figure that foolishness out. Let's be real clear.
Reverend Year, let me just say this for our listeners so that they are clear. Many Medicaid recipients are employed. A significant portion of adults on Medicaid, particularly those under 65, work either full-time or part-time. For example, one study found that 64% of Medicaid adults under 65 who don't receive disability benefits or Medicare were working. Many others are not working due to caregiving responsibilities, illness, disability, or attending school. So essentially, you're saying, the government is saying, that for your health benefit, that instead of doing the job you presently do, You would qualify for such a benefit if you were a field hand, not a waitress, not a student, not a janitorial service worker, not a sanitation worker, not a gardener, not many of the jobs that the working class in our country already work. But at the end of a hard day's work, when they get sick, they need Medicaid. They're saying, leave the job that you presently have, because now the marketplace is saying that you work in a field, there's health care. But working where you presently work, where there's air conditioning, give up that job, because we're no longer providing Medicaid for that. It doesn't get much more outrageous than that in my mind, Dr. Erie.
Listen. It's 4:20 on the East Coast. It's 1:20 on the West Coast. It's too early for a cocktail. But happy hour's coming. Let's just be real clear. But I thought happy hour had happy attached to it. This is not happy. This is a warning sign, right? Red neon lights flashing. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. And for somebody who's thinking about the time delay, as this is a live broadcast, I'm going to say something. Don't panic. It's not going to be something that's going to get us written out. But there's some bullshiggity right here.
Yeah.
And so at some point, we got to have conversations around what the government is really up to. We cannot treat these disclosures or these legislative acts in isolation, like somehow or other they're benign, right? When we look at the Big Beautiful Bill Act, right, that the cuts are delayed until after the midterm, the no tax on tips, the expanded child tax credits, they have sunsets built into the legislation. They are not permanent. And so the way they play this game is, you remember as a kid when we would play distribution and they would say, one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me. And then they get you into the rhythm and you think when they say one for you, they're going to say one for me too. Then they go one for you, two for me, so they're making a response. And then if you don't catch that one, it's going to be one for you, three for me. And the next thing you know, they're going to be for you. And then they go give themselves everything. That's how this is playing out. The problem is it's not a game. And when you get locked into that, to the point that you just made, these are working people. These are not people who are just trying to get by, hustling the government, that whole mythology that they operate with so that we can create some disdain for folks, this notion that somehow other folks who are legally, it's the same term, but it's the same term in the Bible. Don't mistreat the aliens in the land. Take care of them. So where are my right-wing evangelical folks who claim that they read this Bible so deeply that now they're silent and they have no sense of a demand for accountability? Instead, they let the IRS change the rule so that now preachers can endorse candidates, because what they're really trying to do is see if they can create some momentum. Because when we get closer to 2028, this dude ain't going nowhere, at least in his mind. So he's hijacked the military. He's changing the structure. He's got the Supreme Court too intimidated to hold him accountable because they ain't figured out the enforcement part. And so now he's just trying to restructure in honor of his favorite president, Andrew Johnson.
Todd, let me tell you something. I'm sorry for being disrespectful, Reverend Uri. Listen.
Todd is fine. Listen. I've stepped out. We put handles on this. This is the day. Look,
man, I ain't doing that, man. I ain't doing that.
Run. Look, we in run mode. Run. We ain't got time to be playing handles. That's too many syllables. Say what's essential. Let's get to it.
Okay, Reverend Todd. So, listen. Look, let's talk about this in Los Angeles for a minute. Most actors don't command the salaries of our favorite A-listers. All the extras have these other jobs. And what the Secretary of Agriculture just said, for you to get Medicaid, and you know you are a Medicaid recipient, that soon you need to be a farmhand in order to receive that Medicaid. So if you wait tables and you're just waiting to get your call back, your other job for healthcare is going to be an agricultural worker. That's the sector they want you to move into, including animation. Now, I have to process this for the ex-offender as well, because I am one.
Mm-hmm.
So you leave prison, you're not pardoned either by your governor or president of the United States. You got this big tattoo in the middle of your forehead called felon. Chances are, if you have any form of health care without a job, it comes from Medicaid. Now they've just told you, after having served your time and paid your debt to society, you did what the judge said do. You did what the jury said do. What's available to you is a new form of indentured servitude. The 13th Amendment, by the way, outlaws chattel slavery, but for the inmate or the formerly incarcerated, indentured servitude is legal, which means the 13th Amendment doesn't apply to indentured servitude. So now you have an ex-felon, an ex-con, who has to work in a field just to get health care with absolutely no rights that anyone is bound to respect, hearkening back to Dred Scott. Help me, Reverend.
Let
you
the
there?
church say amen is what I got. Here's the real issue. The way you've laid it out is so concise. We don't have to make this profound. Slavery wasn't profound. It wasn't some deep philosophical argument that there's some moral benefit to trafficking human bodies.
Mm.
It was a self-interest role. Here's what I would often tell my students when I was teaching at Northern Illinois University, teaching at the University of Baltimore, teaching public policy. I said, listen to me. Do the Right Thing is a Spike Lee movie. It is not a political philosophy.
Yeah, we have to build that one out right there. We have to build.
Let me go and run with it. Let me go and run with it. I just want to see if you'd let me step out of character for a minute.
Oh, I'm gonna let you have this 3 minutes right up until the break, and then we'll come back for another 10 more.
I'm gonna give you 2 because I know Sister Gina gonna keep us on a tight timeline, and I don't want to get in no trouble. Listen. Before I got saved, let's have that conversation. That somehow or other we've separated and segregated political self-interest from political behavior. So we're expected to give something for nothing because we should just be glad to be able to participate. And so we don't make demands of anybody. We don't talk to Republicans. We don't hold Democrats accountable. We just let them kind of, punk us one way or the other and say, you should. Well, no. I mean, doing the right thing starts with the first great commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. The second is like it. Number 2, love your neighbor as you love yourself. The baseline comparison is, have you mastered the degree of self-love, authentic expression, to be able to make sure that not only do you make sure you're taken care of, but you can take care of your neighbor as well. That's the reality that we're in.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour is discussing the politics of our faith. If it wasn't so sad, I think I would just fall out and cry. But it's laughable that this conversation is taking place out loud in public. We're waiting for Democrats to offer some leadership on these questions, but I suspect they're too overwhelmed to take the vast majority of the issues that are coming their way to even respond to them. You just have to live this experience. And when history is written, it will confirm the witness of African Americans at this hour. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Wednesday with Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary, the politics of our faith when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. President Trump is hosting 5 African leaders at the White House to build economic ties.
You guys are going to fight, we're not going to trade. And we seem to be quite successful in doing that.
Trump says the U.S. wants to strengthen partnerships, but stressed peace is key for future trade. The host of Subway Take says former Vice President Kamala Harris and the show agreed to delete her interview. Kareem Rama called it confusing and weird, noting Harris changed her take last minute to, quote, bacon is a spice, end quote, which didn't sit well with him as a Muslim. And a black female electrician is suing New Jersey Transit for $10 million, claiming discrimination. Barbara Williams, the only black woman in her department, says she's been denied overtime and promotions in favor of male workers and forced to supervise inexperienced staff, doubling her workload. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies, offering national LTE coverage and no subscription ever. Perfect for instant contact with an aging parent. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com and you'll get an extra 60% off, free UPS shipping, and add code radio for an extra 5% off.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Ben Shelton's history chase at Wimbledon is over. Shelton, the only African-American to reach the quarterfinals in the men's bracket, was eliminated in straight sets Wednesday morning by Yannick Sinner of Italy. Sinner, the number 1 tennis player in the world, beat Shelton 7-6, 6-4, and 6-4. The 22-year-old Shelton was attempting to become the first African-American man to win the Wimbledon championship since Arthur Ashe in 1975. One of the perks for Hampton and North Carolina A&T getting chosen to play in the NBA HBCU Classic is that each school will receive a $100,000 donation from the NBA. The NBA also covers all travel expenses for both teams. Hampton and North Carolina A&T will play each other during NBA All-Star Weekend at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The All-Star Game is February 15th. This will be the 5th HBCU Classic sponsored by the NBA. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey man, hey, what's up? What's that station you listening to? Oh man, you don't know? That's Talk Radio. KBLA 1580 AM. Check it out. 1580 KBLA AM.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are on The Politics of Our Faith with Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, Esquire, 1 foot in the pulpit and 1 foot in the courtroom, Dr. Yeary, but both feet in reality. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I've been shaking my head the entire break.
I do want to ask you, I don't know if this feels like some kind of nightmare that we're living through. And I can imagine for, I wouldn't wish Parkinson's on anybody. I certainly wouldn't wish it on people that I care for. And I care for all people. I think it's a dreaded disease. But I think in the state that my father's in, given the struggle that he is confronting, I just think if he really knew what was going on, that it would be so devastating to the last 60 years of his work and the commitment that he made with his life. But I can only imagine that there is an entire generation of people who fought for the basic rights and liberties that you and I now enjoy, who, while they may not have Parkinson's, they are twisting and turning with a profound level of anxiety that we probably, Dr. Yeary, don't fully appreciate.
Yeah, you touch an important point and a very real and sensitive one. Having been amongst those who've been able to spend time with your father, work with and for your father, I spent a lot of time with your dad as Parkinson's continued to progress. Having to learn his cadence and his speech as his speech was being impaired. But I think and I often think about Rev, I think in real time, aside from the fact that his body cannot maintain or sustain his heart and his analysis, to be trapped in a body at this moment when everybody who's ever been around Reverend knows he would be not just in the fight, but leading the fight.
Man, he would be in the center of the ring.
Listen.
Man, believe that. Believe that now.
Listen, and look, and having those of us who work with and for him running from place to place, he'd be like, let's go, right? It would be from place to place, spot to spot, often weeks at a time before he would make it back to the family home in Chicago. That's where it is. So we have an obligation, we have a duty to be able to operationalize what we've learned from Reverend that now Reverend cannot do himself. And here's where I think this goes. He would often say, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. We don't come to the table to negotiate. We come to the table often asking, well, what you got for us? And they say, well, we don't have much. I'll tell you a joke. When I first came to Baltimore, I've been pastoring at Douglas now 18 years, just started my 19th year here.
Congratulations, Pastor.
It's a tremendous privilege. And I thank you for that. So one of my first meetings here, the then sitting governor, Martin O'Malley, was coming into a meeting with some preachers, Black preachers, to talk about supporting him in his reelection. So this is probably year 3, year 4. And when he sits down, the first thing he says is, thank you for meeting with me, but I want to put this out here up front. I am not able to have a transactional conversation with you. Now, I came here from Chicago. So the first thing I did was I started looking around to see who gonna throw something first. This thing getting ready to pop off up in here. And nothing happened because it was so shocking. One, that you're asking for support, but you don't want to have a conversation about the work, about the outputs. And to be able to give voice to it, to say you want something for nothing, I think was beginning to show the tone and the tenor of a party that had lost its ability to understand what politics is all about. Even when we think about the current president, what did he say last Friday? Promises made, promises kept. It may not be the deal that we would have made, but somebody made a deal and they're expecting him to deliver on it. I don't see a deal on the table. And I'm not talking about the old game show, let's make a deal. You can get behind what's behind door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, and hope that you don't pick the door that's got the donkey and the hay basket behind it and some old foolishness like that. Then we're talking about tangible deliverables that must come from our government. And the reason you can have a Secretary of Agriculture, first of all, let's not even get into this notion of a meritocracy. Because if we start evaluating who's in this administration, I don't think resume comparison is what you want to do. But now that we've worked past that, now that we've gotten folks who are just there for performance art, they now get to say whatever the administration wants said, no matter how offensive it is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to displace all of these field workers, because there was a big movement to make sure that they got paid appropriate wages, had appropriate protections.
Cesar Chavez.
Right? That was a fight. But now they're saying we're going to put them out and we're going to move you all in so that you can kind of keep your benefit. I'm not sure how that works, but based on what I know about history that they keep trying to ignore or rewrite, the revisionism of this administration version 2.0 is a continuation of what they did the first time around. That's problematic. And what makes it problematic is we don't know the history either.
Not only do we not know the history, we find ourselves in some kind of position of rights that we get to look down on somebody who's a farm worker, but then we celebrate Juneteenth. But then we talk about Watch Night and the Emancipation Proclamation. And it is almost as if we don't understand that these farm workers at some point in time are either going to get a new amendment to the Constitution or they are going to be emancipated from being agricultural workers, just like Black folks were agricultural workers. This is some kind of new form of sharecropping. Am I wrong on the sharecropping question, Dr. Uri? And I think we have about 15 seconds. You know what? Let me go to the break. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we'll come forward with Dr. Todd Uri, 1 foot in the pulpit, 1 foot out of the pulpit, when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show for some final thoughts.
From all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580. And we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. And I thank you, thank you.
Oh, by the way, Ivan's no longer on the project. His wife got a new job, so they're moving across the country.
Robin's top researcher is deviating to a new market. This isn't standard.
And now we're short-staffed. Who's going to finish all these projects?
She needs a cluster of new data analysts, and there's no margin for error.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Put our matching platform to work so you can spend less time searching and more time connecting with talented candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Dr. S. Todd Urey. Dr. Urey, I want to just give you a little bit of breaking news. 11 presidents of Liberia were born in the United States and were of African descent. Joseph Jenkins, first and seventh president, born in Norfolk, Virginia. Stephen Allen Benson, second president, born in Cambridge, Maryland. Daniel Bashiel Warner, third president, born in Baltimore County, Maryland. James Spriggs Payne, fourth and eighth president, born in Richmond, Virginia. Edward James Rowe, fifth president, born in Newark, Ohio. James Skirving Smith, sixth president, born in Charleston, South Carolina. Anthony Gardner, ninth president, born in Southampton County, Virginia. Alfred F. Russell, 10th president, born in Lexington, Kentucky. William D. Coleman, the 13th president, born in Lafayette, Kentucky County. And Garretson Gibson, the 14th president, born in Baltimore, Maryland. Liberia was founded as a country in Africa where newly freed African Americans could return home, set up their own country. And the first 11 presidents of Liberia were born to African American descent. This is what Donald Trump just said moments ago to the Liberian president in the Oval Office. President Trump says the president of Liberia, where English is the official language, speaks, quote, such good English, quote, while meeting with several African leaders of African countries. It just doesn't get any better, Dr. Urey.
All right.
The country speaks English, Dr. Urey.
Listen, I'm gonna give you the most profound thing you will have heard today. And I'm gonna give credit to where it comes from. I'm gonna quote Forrest Gump. Stupid is as stupid does. Now, Big Mama used to say, expect nothing from a pig but a grunt. We shouldn't be shocked. We should at least be offended. But this ain't new. I'm like, okay. He's doing what he does, but he's also setting up and orchestrating what we know is coming, which is why this division that they keep trying to, Medicaid recipients. Okay. When we talk about it, we start looking at the data, the breakdown of Medicaid recipients by state and race, right? We know there's data behind that. So which Medicaid recipients? And where are the farms? You mentioned LA a little while ago. So if I live in South Central and they trying to get me to go work and pick some produce, where they gonna move me? So now do I have to go to some designated place where, the government is kind of running the whole operation? And now I'm a traveling field hand to try to get benefits. So now I've got to be separated from the grounding of my identity and expression of who I am, family, friends, extended networks, and relationships, because I need healthcare. It is so problematic that the fact that there's no outcry, nobody's calling it as BS. Forget whether or not the Dems do it. Republicans ain't said that. They went along to get along. Stop expecting something different from them. They not going to find a spine until after they see what the midterm election's going to look like. They've held up special elections for 3 open seats on the Democratic side until November because they didn't want to make the margins tighter with 3 more votes where you got to keep everybody in tow. Let's be real clear on what this hustle is. And let's stop acting that like somehow or other we're expecting that there's this moral code. They should just do it because it's the right thing to do. We know it's the right thing to do. But if you are studying American history, they didn't do it because it was the right thing to do. They did it because they were forced to do it. And if we're not going to force the issue by civic and political engagement, by calling garbage out when they put garbage on the table, I don't care who it comes from. Somebody got to say something, because the next thing in his mind is going to be like, well, you already got Liberia there. Let's make it the next colony and start deporting U.S. citizen Black people out of the country because the Supreme Court's not going to push back on it. You'll have Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, reaming everybody, but I'm not sure you can get the rest of them to even do what needs to be done. This is a time that we got to get serious. Reverend would always say, now's not the time to get discouraged. Now's the time to get determined. Are we serious about this moment? Have we just been giving lip service to the principles that we expect from our government and the outcomes that should be delivered? Not because we're asking for a handout. We got investment. We've got skin in this game. At the end of the day, this president who hates Black people sleeps in a house that the only reason it's white because of the paint, the labor that went into it was Black. Let's stop playing this game like we too naive, like we afraid to tell the story because he likes to either revise it or to delete it. We don't have time for that. At the end of the day, you will only defend what you know to be true. And if you don't know your story, then you become reliant upon somebody else to give you the bits and pieces that they want. And therefore, slavery is no longer a big thing or a bad thing. It's a job training program. Stop playing with me. And this is the side. I got 1 foot in the pulpit. I got 1 foot in the courtroom. But in my mind, between my ears, in my heart, is the resonance of ancestors who made great sacrifices. I'm in them streets. Stop playing.
I've got about 3 minutes before the end of our show, and I'd be remiss if you didn't share with us the consequences or the implications of the Internal Revenue Service's ruling that it's okay for you to speak your mind in your church and support who you want to support.
Yeah, the rule is kind of tricky, right? You can now endorse candidates as a pastor in conversations with your congregation because they view those as kind of family meetings. It's not really public endorsement. All right, let's set that off to the side. I think what it does is it affords an opportunity, without going as far as endorsing candidates, to having more fulsome conversations around agendas. Because if we start having conversations about the issues, then you won't have to endorse a candidate. Their position on the issues will allow them to self-identify. Therefore, you don't need me to step out and say whatever. But I still believe that this is part of an opportunity to start creating this support for the current sitting president coming from faith leaders who will attempt to endorse him so that he can have some momentum trying to breach the amendment to the Constitution that limits the United States president to 2 terms. Now, you didn't ask me for it, but I'm going to give it to you real quick. Here's the word of hope. Be wary, not weary. Pay attention. Don't just take it at face value. Think critically about what you're hearing, because what they're telling you has a direct impact on the significant issues that are primary to our community. Be wary. Stay woke, as they would say. But don't grow weary, because we're going to have to do some work. Now's not the time to give up. Don't lose courage. Don't get frustrated. Don't bump your head. Don't do no drugs. Don't fall out. Get up. And let's step up to the plate. Let's speak up about the issues that are most important, because the promise is when the season comes, we're going to reap a harvest if we faint not.
Dr. S. Todd Yeary is with us every Wednesday on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Dr. Yeary, how can our listeners stay in touch with your ministry?
You can check us out, Douglas Memorial Community Church, on all social media platforms. The best way to do it is if you happen to be in the DMV and you want the real live experience, straight no chaser, meet me on the corner of Lafayette and Madison in West Baltimore. Don't be afraid of the hood. It's our hood. You're always welcome.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to S. Todd Yeary on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I have not been given the all clear yet, so I want to just say this. Reverend Yeary, I want to thank Tavis Smiley for creating this platform that allows us to have honest conversations coast to coast. It just doesn't get much better than this. From our respective locations, your library, my library, we're able to have this conversation in large measure because Tavis has a vision. And that vision is to speak truth to power. And we can do it right here on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Until tomorrow.